Well, I've always wanted to be a fashion photographer.
But it's not conscious. It's my natural, these two conflicting qualities in me, depressive and completely ebullient.
And to understand you is to understand that both of them are at play.
That's right.
Look at the women I get to photograph as a fashion photographer. I can choose the most beautiful women in the world. Those girls that photographers like I use are very rare.
I definitely incorporate a lot of ambiguity and ambivalence in the work, so it's hard to describe the way I work because I don't, I work so intuitively. I oftentimes don't know what I'm going after until after it's shot or after I've done several shots. And sometimes I don't know about what I've done until I read what somebody's written about it. And so it's hard for me to really analyze the work in that way.
But I go there with a great deal of preparation. My experience come to my help. There is some little gift which I have that we have immediate rapport, immediate understanding. And then you leave everything unfold naturally. With President Reagan, it's not unusual to feel that he treats portrait photographers very much like he would treat a director of the film. He would accept it. With President Truman, he looked so congenial because it was soon after the headline in one of these papers said, "Dewey had won." All these are circumstances that come to your assistance.
They think it's black and white, nudity, beautiful women in their natural environment. Is it what you are happy to be recognized for, or we misunderstand your signature?
I love doing nudes. I love anatomy. I love the stripping away of everything. It brings me back to the world and the work that I grew up with, the Renaissance art. And I guess some of my most recognizable photographs, like the Obsession campaign with Kate, were black and white and they were nudes. So people tend to always gravitate to that period in my life and stuff. I started only shooting black and white, and then when I decided that it was time to start, I was kind of pushed, all fashion, they wanted color all the time, and I was like shooting only black and white, and at one point I was like, okay, I have to figure out what my color picture is going to look like at this point, so I started experimenting with color film and pushing and pulling film and printing with different tones and things like that, and also referencing paintings and stuff, and I had to discover my own color world. I was inspired by the way paintings looked in churches and the way they always looked dark and the lighting was quite dark and the colors looked muted and stuff. So that was what I was drawn to. So that became my color world, and I did a lot of fashion work that was inspired by that tonality and that color.
Through a photograph, you can make people believe anything. So it's not really the camera's doing, it's really the person behind it, and figuring out ways to tell lies in a way through the camera. I mean, some people use a camera just straight on and document exactly what they see, but I think it's more interesting to show what perhaps you might never see, and it's showing maybe what's in somebody's imagination.
It's a combination of graphic simplicity and the power of spirit and soul. It's design.
I think I've been arrested on the visual level. I think that, how did it start? How did the world start? There was light.
Yeah.
There was nothing else. and and then a while later, mountains and rivers and people. All our impressions of the world are formed, I think, before words. The terror of falling out of the crib, of starvation, of a breast that you want that rams into your mouth. You're out of control, and you begin to form who you are according to your relationship to these things that are pre-verbal. And I think part of me was arrested on that level, and being arrested developed it in the way that blind people hear so much better than we do. That's very often, or in the way that you compensate for any. And I think I overdeveloped my visual sense. I can read from you. I mean, it's shocking what goes on in my mind looking at you at this moment, looking at you every night on television. I know when you're tired. I know when you've had troubles.
I think, you find things or find ideas when you're driving a car, Nan bought me a really nice pickup I have. It's black, it's a GMC pickup, and it's brand new. I have a really old pickup, but it still runs, but I don't use it too much. I also have a really old 57 Chevy out in Montana. But when I'm in these cars, I'll listen to some music and it'll really turn me on to an idea, to a thing, I put a lot of those things into my movies, the films I make, the documentaries, the short films, and also into books I do, or pictures from magazines, or assignments from people I work for. I don't like to be too serious about it, talking about where you get your ideas from for a photographer is a little strange, because it sort of takes away the actual mystery of taking a photograph. For instance, I once said to David Bailey, who's a buddy of mine whose photographs I love to this day, I said, David, so many young photographers used to watch Antonioni's blow up, and they thought that was the way photographers should be. So we'd all be around, and we'd be moving all over the place and jumping over the girl and standing there. And then we all realized we looked like a total fool, So I think that I thought a lot about photography, where I tried to find it in myself, what it was that really turned me on to something.
It's like a puzzle. I try to put in things that enriched your life. If it's an interesting place or something you want to remember. It could be a cigarette pack or a poem.
I do have a personal discipline. I've only taken one picture of one thing, not two. I would take more than one, get so confused later when I was trying to figure out which was the best frame. I said, this is ridiculous. I'm just going to take one, that's going to be.
For me, a very complex world has to be simplified, has to be stripped down. And design for me was a way out of confusion, because great design simplifies a very complicated world.
Photography is something, it's a medium that was defined by a set of parameters which are very clear and could link everybody from Maplethorpe to Maybridge, from Ashday to Avedon, and they all do the same medium. That set of parameters is very much what I work outside of now. So now I take pictures with my phone, I can broadcast them instantly globally, I can change the head from one picture and drop it into another picture, I can change the depth of the picture, I can actually make the picture into a 3D sculpture, all with this machine here. So what I do really isn't photography, it's something outside of that. And the reason to not call it photography is because I think we're at the beginning of a very new medium and a very exciting medium. And I think if we still keep on saying we do photography and we are photographers, then it really holds us back from the potential that we have. There are so many more possibilities now, so many things that you can do, But I think it's really important to say, okay, well, let's free ourselves up from this sort of idea that we're photographers, because we can do things with sound, we can do things with motion, we can do things with live broadcasting, we can do things with virtual reality, all those things which are clearly outside the boundaries of photography. So we had to come up with another name for, well, I felt I had to come up with another name for what I do, and the only one I could come up with was image making, which I think is pretty rubbish, but I can't think of anything better. So
I am very much aligned with this single moment. I don't have much interest in what happens before or what happens after. It's a very kind of condensed narrative. It's a story that asks more questions than it answers. I consider that limitation a strength, because I can fully invest in the single moment and make it as mysterious and as beautiful as I can.
I felt more awake when I didn't turn my mind off when I was in a taxi or having dinner, but was actually paying attention to what I was doing at all kinds of moments during the day.
I love my camera. It's just a tool. It's it's just a tool. That's all. I just feel like it could be a paintbrush, except it takes too long to make the pictures I would want to make. So this way, it's a split second, and I get the picture. I mean, I used to, when I painted in college, I just laboriously copied things and took a lot of time, and this way I can spend all the time on what the picture should be, and then use the camera to just capture it.
No, it's not, because they always say, well, you hate fashion, you don't like fashion. It's not true. I like fashion, but fashion has no role in my pictures. I mean, it has, because they're not nude, no? But not more than that. I'm happy when I have a fashion that doesn't disturb me in the story I want to tell, for example, if it's a narrative. No? And then sometimes you do couture, and then it's all about the fashion. No? But in the real, like normal life and in normal pictures I do, fashion is second. No? More important is the story.
So it just wasn't about taking pictures, but it was about making people feel good and saying, "Can I take a picture of you? Why you want my picture for?" And that was what I always wanted to hear, that, because I could sit back and say, because you are beautiful, because you are special. And it just made me feel good to say things to make people feel good. So that's basically my beginning.
Yeah. Now, why do you have these two juxtaposition like this?
I wish I could answer it. It felt right. I had great sympathy for Marilyn, great understanding of what performance was about and what I was in relation to her. It isn't as if I thought it out, Charlie. That's the thing that's so difficult. You want it to be rational. You want me to make the case. Right. I can make the case. I put those pictures together and I thought, that's right.
Now, is that what happens when you are looking through the lens of that camera? Exactly. You just see something, you say...
There's that instinctively, and then there is also making it happen. Building, in other words, sometimes I don't speak at all. If I want a certain discomfort that I recognize in the person, if I want to heighten that.
If you want to create anxiety, you may not say anything and let them get more nervous.
But that's right, exactly. Most of this is done instinctively. I don't sit down in advance of a sitting and figure it out.
When it really seems to suddenly click is when I don't even recognize what's in the mirror. I mean, in a way, maybe it's like this possession, but I guess that's why I don't feel like it's me or it's a fantasy or of some hidden desire, because it's never planned out. It's just like suddenly like this apparition is there.
When one makes a portrait, it's totally original to the two people involved. So I stand there with my 50 or so years of background that has made me the person I am, and the person walks towards me who I'm going to photograph, or I ask to be in the photograph, with all their baggage, all their life's experience. And when we come together, how we communicate, how I light, all the decisions we both make to make that photograph, when we collude together to make that photograph, are incredibly important and will never be matched again, would never be the same the day after, wouldn't be the same with somebody else. And then enter the third person, who is the viewer, who looks at this picture and recognizes something that they know about themselves, and add value and add meaning to it, because it's the viewer who becomes the author of the piece of work.
I think it's partly Italian and it's partly what I am. I'm Italian. I was born in Italy, Naples. I grew up there. Emotions are very important for me. Trying to understand emotions and being able to create things that draw emotions from people. That's because I respond emotionally to the world, so that just seems my language.
I don't really think in terms of a full narrative. Maybe I make up a little scenario around whatever has happened at that moment, but I have never gone farther than putting things together and making it really sequential.
I look at a face and I decide how to light. And the light for me are my tools for adding atmosphere. And that atmosphere that is mine meets the atmosphere of the person. When that person is being genuinely themselves, they add an atmosphere to that picture. And it's that coming together that when it works.
Oh yeah. But the last thing I would think that I go there somewhere, go up with a big Peter Lindbergh and shoot someone, and that's him. No, that is not like that. And that is what most of people probably think. When you get out of your fancy Porsche, you walk in the studio, you feel like God, and then you shoot someone and you feel like you did it again. No, it's very, very different. No? It's not even a collaboration. It's kind of like two gases going to come together. Really, it's very immaterial. It's not really materialistic. It's very kind of immaterial.
As I started to grow up and to understand it all more, I realized that I didn't want to be a fashion photographer. I wanted to be an artist, and I didn't believe that. I always saw that fashion photography was limiting to what I could do and to how I could express myself, and it didn't always. It wasn't always the way I felt, that I was always serving a purpose, a different purpose, a commercial purpose. And so there was a big struggle, and there was also an existential struggle, and it was a financial struggle, and it was, and I battled with that for a long time. But I also kept taking fashion pictures because it was fun and exciting, and I got to work with great people, and I also made money so that I could support myself. And my thinking was, okay, well, at least I can support my artwork. But it wasn't until my maybe 30s that I realized that I felt comfortable being and calling myself a fashion photographer, and also realizing that you are an artist as a fashion photographer, and that that thing could be one thing. Those two worlds can be one thing somehow.
When I do a portrait, I have many choices to be completely subjective, balance subjectivity with objectivity, or completely objective. This was an election year, so it meant, and the assignment was to do the power elite of this country. So that means there are bankers, there are Rockefellers, there are Kissingers, there are union heads, there are everyone from Cesar Chavez to Meany. To tip it cheaply in any direction or illustrate a text was very, very dangerous. I have no feelings about these people. I have no deep feelings about politicians.
So what are you trying to reveal?
In this case, I pulled back and let whatever they wanted to show. And it's amazing what came out of that. Whereas in the American West, I chose people who expressed, or most recently, a Sitting with Antonioni, the film director, faces that expressed something deep in myself